blogging. To me, it's the most important development in media in the last 50 years, at least. More important than the arrival of television in terms of being able to change the world. And I say that because it's about creating a new democratic discussion about reality, and one that transcends the mass media propagation of a narrow collection, a cadre of editors and intellectuals' ideas about the way the world is or the way the world should be. And instead, it's applying a lot of minds to the fundamental human imperative to understand the world and help the species evolve by creating all the different tools and structures that make survival possible. So it's democratic discussion on a very basic level, and I mean democracy in the old Greek sense, not in the sense about elections and politicians and voting and campaigns and things like that. It's about how we treat each other, and it's how you evolve a discussion and how you approach how you arrive at the truth, how you really get down to what's really going on. To me, mass media was a monoculture propagated in the human mind, the mind of the human society, that had that was reflecting very narrow ideas, perceptions of a limited number of people. And that's inherently problematic. There's a weakness to that. That if you make a mistake in trying to figure out what's going on, you could end up with catastrophic consequences because other people will follow, your mistakes, your failures of imagination and perception. And in the 20th century, we've seen that writ large. The history of the 20th century is the failure of ideas that were forced on huge populations that ended up causing mass slaughter, quite literally. Abstractions that became part of the human condition, or forced on the human condition, whether you're talking about fascism, Nazism, or whether you're talking about communism. All of those were ideas that were propagated by mass media. They were propagated by a small cadre of people, and then mass media was used to imprint those ideas on large population, and those ideas were incredibly defective, and they caused the death and suffering of tens and hundreds of millions of people. That's the product of mass media, and the cautionary tale of what's wrong with it, that it doesn't represent enough of a democratic discussion, and not just because of elections, because there weren't enough brains talking to other brains about what's going on. Now with the arrival of blogs, you have the possibility of every individual becoming an editor themselves and an analyst themselves, and being able to propagate and talk about what they think is important, what they think is going on in the world. And you could have not just a one-way discussion, I put this out and you got to accept what I say, like media does, but you have a discussion where I put this out and somebody else says, well, wait a second, no, that's wrong, I think it's something else. Or you say, but did you ever think about this? Or yes, that's right, but it also implies, or yes, that's right, and think about this as well, and when you put the two things together, you end up with something even more amazing. So you have this very rapid rubbing of brains against brains that end up accelerating the process of analysis and arrival at appreciation of what's really happening. Arrival at reality is getting the human species closer to reality. And reality, to me, is the crucial part of what understanding reality is how humans survive and prosper. If you don't understand reality, you're going to fail as an individual, and you're going to fail as a species. The more you understand reality, the more successful you're going to be, because you're more in touch with it. You can act in accordance with it. You can be part of the process that's really happening, the evolutionary process of the universe. If you don't understand reality, you're going to be fighting against the evolutionary process of the universe. And you can't fight against the evolutionary processes of the universe. You'll lose. It's much bigger than you. It's much bigger than the human race. It's much bigger than the planet Earth. The planet Earth is an inconsequential speck in the entire, galaxy, in the entire universe, and in the process of evolution, which has been going on billions of years. So the more you're in touch with reality, the more you're in touch with this process of evolution, the more you can be congruent with with evolution, the more successful you can be as an individual, the more successful you can be as a species. And because we're a tool-using species and a tool-making species, we can actually help drive evolution ourselves, so we can be part of the process of evolution in a conscious way, and perhaps make the world better for ourselves and for the rest of the human race. Blogs, to me, are an incredibly fundamental part of that process. It's the democratic discussion to understand the real world and to